Hi, I'm Jake, and today I'm going to share how my competitive Death Guard army performed at the Lone Star Open, which was a 165-person ITC Major event this past weekend. If you're a current subscriber, thank you so much for continuing to tune back in. It's a relatively new channel, so I really appreciate the feedback so far. If you're new to this channel, what I do here is cover primarily competitive 40K content that I consider myself, of course, to be knowledgeable about, and I also produce fully painted battle reports. My current flavor is Death Guard, so expect more content on the subject until I choose to dive myself into something else, perhaps Thousand Suns. If you ever have a suggestion on what content you'd like for me to cover next, please drop me a line in the comments, and of course stay subscribed, which helps the growth of the channel, which I truly appreciate. All right. So this was all somewhat of a last-minute decision, but thankfully I was able to pull off taking the weekend off to participate in the Lone Star Open event, which is ran by Frontline Gaming. An awesome group of dudes that run Frontline Gaming, and I've had the pleasure of getting to know them this past year since we all hang out and play in the same city, so it goes without saying that they do have my absolute support. I've been playtesting and refining my triple volkite contemptor list in my local meta through RTTs and such, but it was inevitably time to try and see how it would hold up against big league players and at the same time document my entire journey for the channel. Let's go ahead and show you my list and get started on this adventure. So I even had to procure a transportation system because this is the first time I've actually traveled out of state for such an event. And my whole army's magnetized, as you guys have seen on some of the battle reports and whatnot. Hopefully this works because I'm filming this clip on the day before I fly out, which is Wednesday, what is it, the 19th? The 21st. So at least I can share the energy that I have, obviously the nerves and stuff. I'm relatively confident in my list, but overall it's just going to be a fun experience. So I did pick up, I went with the Battle Foam 432. It's perfectly TSA size. No, this isn't officially a review, but I was just really impressed by this, and I'm sure some of you guys are also looking for solutions. So cool little zipper bag, bunch of pockets and such. But the army is what everybody's interested in. So I've got everything was managed to fit so perfectly on here. So I was super excited about that. But I am taking Death Guard, of course. This is the list that I have been running competitively out here. And yeah, also took a little bit of a risk by running this configuration as the ferryman. So I'm really banking on getting use, even if it's once or twice, even if it happens once or twice throughout the entire GT, of using the 1CP strat to actually extend the range of one of my Fetid Virian's aura abilities by 6 inches. I'm hoping that's gonna come into play enough to determine the win or loss. But yeah, let's go over this list real quick. So in my HQ slots, I have the Demon Prince, and I've been running him relatively consistently with the Curse of the Leper spell, Rotten Constitution as a Warlord trait, which gives him -1 and -2 AP ignoring. Of course, he's got the wings, but then he's also got the Separating Plate relic. So 2-up save, 5-up invul, bounces a mortal wound in combat if he actually ends up taking a wound. So he's in there. And then second HQ slot, I'm running my, wow, I just forgot his name for a second. The Lord of Virulence, my Lord of Virulence. He's actually my Warlord. He's taking Hulking Physique, so basically transhuman physiology on him, can only be wounded on 4s or more. He's got the Virulent Fever pathogen, so he will be producing or generating mortal wounds on 6s to wound in addition to his damage. So it's been a combo that's really been working out for me. And then in my troop slots, I've been taking 10 cultists, so don't mind the 2x5s. Yeah, I understand that's not legal. So I've been running a 10-man squad, and their sole purpose is just to perform actions, score points, possibly deny backline deep strikes. Who knows? They're just kind of a utility because since they don't have a whole bunch of Death Guard natural abilities, so you know they're useless in a vacuum, yes, but very useful when trying to build at least this list that I've been running. 30, or sorry, 18, 18, 18 Poxwalkers. I will have to pull 2 out each. This is why I'm kind of going over my army stuff before I pack up for the night. And then in my elite, that Plague Marines too. So I've got a 5-man squad of naked Plague Marines, also for actions and just, wherever they need to go. Blightlord Terminators, where are you? Blightlord Terminators here, protecting the Dreadnoughts and the Demon Prince physically. So Blightlord Terminators, I am taking them with axes and 2 flails and 2 Blight Launchers. Yeah, they're my brick. You can see the Cyclone missile launchers have been mounted on there. I think the blue tag's coming a little loose, but that's okay. So we've got 3 Contemptor Dreads, all armed with twin Volkite Culverins, so banking on those mortal wounds for some long-range shooting, as well as the missiles. So since there's a lot of... I'm expecting a lot of to run into a lot of AdMech. The blast profile, so basically the frag profile on the rockets, hopefully will come useful, or even situationally if I need to rock them as a crack profile to try to take some big stuff down. But yeah, that's my shooting line right there. 3 Death Shroud Terminators. You guys saw this when I was showing you the Lord of Virulence. So I got the 3 Death Shroud Terminators, not running anything fancy on them whatsoever. They're just there. And then Tallyman is my auto take. He's got the Tollkeeper Relic, so he's going to be buffing or exploding shots for any of my core units, which would be these guys and the guys below and the Dreadnoughts. So we're banking on some volume of shots. The Foul Blight Spawn is in my list as well, and he has been given Revolting Stench Bats, naturally, to basically deny charge priorities, charge bonuses, so on and so forth. And then the Viscous Death Pathogen, so he gets to, if he so chooses, reroll his d6 number of flamers. So I've got a Strength 8 flamer, which is -3, 2 damage, extend the range because Death Guard can do that to plague weapons. But yeah, that's my 2,000 points Lone Star Open list. I'm very excited to see how this will perform against all the players, all the awesome players from what I'm seeing are attending the GT. Yeah, that's the army, guys. On top of the gaming nerves, this was actually my first flight since the world basically shut down last year. Thankfully, everything went nice and smooth, and even got to enjoy my favorite travel drink. This event in particular was held in Allen, Texas, which wasn't too far from Dallas, and I must say, the accommodations in the venue was damn near perfect. During the first night in, it was pretty much just hanging out and mingling with old faces or familiar faces, as well as getting to see some new faces while we all got ready for day 1, the next day, which consists of the first 3 rounds. Man, walking in on day 1, the energy was amazing in the hall as everyone made their way up to their first matchups. All 165 players starry-eyed and striving to go undefeated to make some top final placements. What was interesting and notable at LSO was ITC's introduction of a defender-attacker turn-based terrain placement format, which happens after the deployment roll-off. So how it worked, starting with the defender, each player took turns placing equal amounts of terrain on the respective board halves, with restrictions, of course, like ruins having to be 6 inches away from other ruins or 4 inches from other pieces of terrain, as well as being 6 inches away from board edge. Basically, a numerous amount of restrictions. Definitely a new concept overall, and I understand the intent was to give all players a level playing field, since it's player-placed terrain rather than having preset boards. There's definitely pluses and minuses, in my own opinion, to this mechanic, but overall, I really do think it worked out great. My first match was against Ultramarines, which consisted of a healthy number of Primaris heavy intercessor bodies. My opponent did such a great job making use of the light cover terrain pieces and obscuring terrain to try and stay out of my firing lanes, but I was able to clock my first win of the day, 88-41. My secondaries this game were raise the banners high, grind them down, and engage on all fronts. Aggressive, I know. For my second match, that was against Dark Angels. This one had me a little bit worried, I will admit, since I've had a fair amount of practice playing against such a durable and hard-to-shift army, but notable blessed, with another win, 100 to 60 point score.
For this mission, this mission was priority target, so I took that mission secondary, raised the banners, and grind them down. For the last match of the day, and naturally, my body was confused between the excitement, adrenaline, and the nerves combined, was against Sisters, Adeptus Sororitas. As event rounds progress, you start getting paired up with similar scoring opponents, meaning the competition really starts to heat up. After a brutal and lucky turn 1 for my sister's opponent, who went first, and you can kind of see it in the clip, it was able to get enough movement between pre-game and advance rolls to get their Melta within range of my contemptors and popped all 3 of them using 2 extra rounds of shooting from Cherubs. Admittedly, a bit of a misplay on my part, not thinking that that would happen, statistically speaking, of course, but either way, lesson learned. It ended up being an absolute grind to have to start my turn of the entire game without any substantial firepower, because I lost all 3 of my contemptors, but I had to pull out all the brain power I possibly could for the day to outplay the mission and score, as well as deny my opponent from scoring just as much. As grim as this game started for me, I was able to pull out an 86 to 60 point win using assassination, engage on all fronts, and grind them down. This was arguably one of the hardest matches I've ever played to date, being so on the back foot against a powerful army right out of the gate, but this goes to show that Death Guard can be well equipped to survive and score. Okay, so as one could imagine, I was starting to get mentally burned out after my last match of day 1. And what was even more nerve-wracking was how much I throttled my win points unconsciously or subconsciously, and discovered that I ended up the day sitting at 6th place overall. Not bad. To add to that, I was not really looking forward to the first match of day 2, which happened to be the Scouring mission. Which, in my opinion, is one of the toughest maps for Death Guard in particular to perform on, but on top of this, turns out that I scored high enough to have to face the Scouring against Sean Naden. Some of you might not follow all the big names in competitive 40k, but if you do, most people know his name because he's currently the #1 ranked ITC player in the world. You can say that got into my head a little bit, but what an honor to know I was going against and throwing dice in the morning with such a legendary player. Time to get some beauty sleep and get ready for the Eldar shenanigans in the morning, was what I said. Hot damn, this was intense for me to experience. Never have I ever gone up against such a player skill set who surgically measures, plans, and what seems to be pre-planning my counter turn, all in his movement phase. There were multiple times where I had no idea what to do because he not only denied my scoring, but also denied my strategy. It's not often that I get stuck and unsure how to react, but this game certainly did it in for me. I made a grave error in turn 1, where I expected his soaring spike Harlequin boats, with fusion pistols of course, to park and hold the center. But as I moved up my Blightlord Terminators, he reacted in his next turn by jumping over into my deployment zone and caused mass havoc, to say the least. On top of that, I greatly regretted my secondary choices, which were spread the sickness, grind them down, and engage on all fronts. Again, aggressive. It had been working for me so far. I should have recalculated. What I should have done overall was play this match ultra conservative and fight only when needing to, rather than trying to kill everything as fast as possible. Probably should have taken a secondary to the last and just held back. What I noticed, being the beauty of Sean's list that he brought, was how much indirect fire he was able to shell out and basically pressure me out, pressure any opponent with, as well as making use of fire and fade to kite away from the bullets and punches, which inevitably should have ripped through his toughness 3 troops. Very deceiving on paper. Versus the tabletop, and there's no question I was batting out of my league during this one. There's no other way to say it. First loss of the event, and man, what a loss. 15 to 90 in favor of Eldari, and I couldn't even feel bad about this one. If anything, it was an enlightening and motivating experience, and this comes from the heart, which inspired me to tighten up my gameplay that much more. So who did I face next? Death Guard. It was bound to happen, considering the strong showing of Death Guard players at this event in particular. But a mirror match definitely gets hairy at times. I don't know if you guys have played Death Guard versus Death Guard. It gets annoying. I felt my opponent may have been more concerned than I was, considering how much long-range shooting that I had, but he also had some really heavy hitters, like 3 units of 3 Death Shrouds, backed by a Biologist Putrefier, more Flesh Mower drones, and a Demon Prince with Warp Insect Hive. Yes, it all hit very hard. It was a bloodbath to say the least, where both armies tried to stay out of firing lanes as much as possible, but in the end, my Dirty Boys pulled out a 98 to 59 point victory using Raise the Banners, Stranglehold, and Assassination. I was still very much in the game after this win. Maybe not very much. Albeit way harder, since my last match only scored me 15 points. I was already on the back foot points-wise. But depending on the outcome of my 6th and final game, as well as the outcome of the other top player scores, I might have still been in contention for being in the top 8 for finals. I actually believe that I was. As I mentioned earlier in this video, whatever you score, your matched opponents are also scoring similarly, or at least that high, so inevitably, my last game was matched with a very strong player. Alright, 6th and final game before deciding finals. Not only did I get paired with a strong player, but I was also facing an infantry-heavy Lucius Admech army. If you know what those words mean, then your butthole is also puckered. I've had my fair share of practice against Admech, but man, there were even combos and abilities in this opponent's list that I hadn't seen before. Simply incredible, the amount of tricks and durability this army can pull off, and my opponent did a fantastic job threatening me every single turn. We both took Stranglehold on this one, so it really felt like each turn we kept knocking one unit out at a time on both sides, but in the end, he had far more units, mobility, and of course firepower that I just couldn't pull it off. His 3 to the last units were mainly 20-man Ranger blobs, which I just couldn't get to in time, while the rest of the army just shot me to death. It happens. My Death Guard lost 59 to 98, with potentially questionable choices taking Assassination on my side, considering how much Lookout Sir he had, and accompanied by Raise the Banners and Stranglehold, yes, was my last one. Another super fun and super tight game, but it knocked me out of the event. All in all, I had such a great time at LSO, not just from the gaming perspective, but also the run-ins and friendships made with awesome dudes. Notably, the infamous Death Guard player, Don Huson, you probably know his name if you're a part of the Death Guard groups, Robert Woods from Goonhammer, that was a pleasure, and of course the local friends over at Frontline Gaming. Frankie, Reese, Leo, Kicker, everyone else on the team, of course. Great friggin' job with this event, guys. Oh, and Ben Jurek, of course, another local Vegas friend. Some of you may know him as the Custom Stompa guy. It was amazing for us to have our local Vegas competitive group cheering us on from afar, motivating us both between rounds, just helping us grind and stay focused and just cheering us on. It was awesome. Much love. The love was real. And I've said it a few times now, but it was an absolute honor and privilege playing at tables alongside some of the top players from around the world. These types of experiences can really push a competitive player like myself to keep trying harder, keep learning more, and try to come back with a new skill set to compete again and again. With all that being said, what were my takeaways, you might ask? Well, as some of you may know, Death Guard has been my main army since late 8th edition. Having received an overall codex for 9th edition, I've been hell-bent on having them keep up, or trying to have them keep up with all the nasty new stuff hitting the tabletop in a competitive setting. With LSO being the first big litmus test to everything I've come up with and practiced with, it was really nice to see how they actually performed. Personally, I expected to cap out at 3 wins and 3 losses, so going 4-2 and one of the losses being against the #1 player in the world, I guess is nothing for me to be personally disappointed about, but I'm also very hard on myself. Death Guard can be played in a variety of builds and styles, and this event definitely proved it across the other players who ended up in the top 50 out of the 165 placements. This is evident in how different the top 3 Death Guard players were this past weekend. First, there was Johnny Velasquez, running a bloat drone heavy list, which also had 2 volkite contemptors. Mine, of course, with the triple contemptors alongside a 10-man Blight Lord brick, and Don Huson, who ran a mass demon engine list. And guess what? All 3 of us performed quite well. The most important takeaway for me was to focus on tightening up my placement rather than banking on what my army can or should be capable of doing. So to really think things through a lot more before I even do things. I had wins where I felt like I took too much stuff in my list between warlord traits and relic choices. And then there were other games where I really just had to work and grind my ass off to pull off the wins. This goes to show that balance in a list can be far more crucial to consider rather than all the combos or unit powers that you want to hinge on. That being said, the core of my list being triple volkite contemptors definitely do work. And don't forget, I have plenty of bits if you want the hookup to send me an email. But it doesn't mean you can't win without them, like what I've heard every now and then. For any players interested in the competitive scene, my best advice remains as play an army style that fits you like a glove and moves and flows the same way that you do. In my case, it was multiple layers of redundancies with as much synergy as possible to be able to force my opponents in making hard decisions throughout each match. Well, that's it for today, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in, and if you found this video to be helpful or informative by any measure and would like to see more content like this, please stay subscribed and join in on the conversation. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.